بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وجعلنا من الماء كل شيء حي
In 1919, almost a century ago, a scholar from Trarza wrote the Book of Scholars Informed by the History of Wales, a work of Sahelian geography in which it provides an overview of a region located between the Atlantic Ocean and the Senegal River. Its title is an invitation to discover another Sahel, where the traces of women and men of the past reveal a culture of great richness. In a Sahelian environment, fresh water is very important. It brings people together, feeds livestock, and is a source of shared prosperity. Discrete and valuable brand of land use planning. The well is an infrastructure based on technical and social engineering. Around the wells, real public-private partnership takes shape. Because these places are both crossroads and stopovers.
We go to the wells which are next to the road, and sometimes we dig wells here in the bush. But thank God we found this well, and we no longer have a problem with the supply of water. Now we can water our animals, and we draw our water because it's drinkable. We no longer need to go so far in order to find water, thank God. We have always been breeders. We still are, and we will remain so. We won't change. We sell the animals to go shopping. It's an economic activity. The only thing that we haven't got is fodder, when there are not enough pastures. This well here was drilled by people who were here before us. We don't own it, but we benefit from it. Our own well has collapsed. The people who lived here before us drilled this well. We use it for free. The breeder's life is very tiring. You have to leave very early in the morning to return at home at nightfall, without taking a break during the day. Because you have to watch the animals to protect them from their predators such as hyenas or jackals. It's only when we return to our camp in the evening that we can take a rest. Actually, if we had plenty of water and fodder, all our problems would be solved. Because, to tell the truth, we lack a lot of resources. The fodder comes from abroad through the Food Security Commission. We receive bags of grass. I don't know how it is prepared. Drawing water from the well is an exhausting work. With solar pumps, access to water would be easier.
When he wrote at the beginning of the 20th century, Mahmed Ould Ahmed Yoro used wells as an entry point to present its region through its history, its culture, and its poetry. The first entry into its scholarly repertoire is devoted to the region of Igwidi, comes from the Berber word Igwid, that it means deep wells with crumbly soil. As a consequence, they are fragile due to their great depth and rapid collapse. No houses are to be found in their proximity.
ITW2 Bakar, Old Yali, well digger. The soils vary. Sometimes 9 days of work are not enough to dig 1 meter. And when the ground is loose, we have to use donkeys to clear the sand. The wells are deep, you know, and the more you dig, the more you have to clear, remove the sand. So we need animals, bulls, donkeys, or camels, to remove the sand and reach the water. Actually, it all depends on the ground. Sinking in some soils is easy, in others, much less so. When the ground is rocky, you have to use a pick, and it's hard. Every well is special. Look, we cut stakes with an axe, and we arrange them like this. Then we surround it with a straw coming from the shrub, called morkba. Afterward, we put the sand and we compress. Later, we add straw and sand before compressing again, until the well is deep enough and the water gushes out. Otherwise, we use barrels as molds. We flatten them into flexible sheets of metal that we use for molding. Sometimes it takes 6 to 7 stacked barrels.
Mohammed Ould Ahmed Durand clarified his depiction of Igwidi. There are only gum trees, from which people pick the gum and they will exchange in European stopovers, usually in the spring. And that's it. More than a century later, we can only agree with the words of the author. Almost nothing is left of in Bamba, an abode created around the well, where Khadija bint Muhammad al-Aqil taught logic to Mukhtar ibn Bona, great scholar of the Tajakan tribe, and Al-Mami Abdul Qadiri, Futa Toro's ruler. A few trees mark the cemetery where a scholar and a prince stand side by side. Ahmed ibn Abdul Muhammad al-Aqil died in 1244. And Amr ibn Mukhtar, the emir of Trarza, human beings will come and go, leaving no footprint. But there, following the sap of a tree help understand their lives. So how about taking Mohammed Ould Ahmed Durand at his word and focus on an exceptional plant, the acacia tree?
The gommier is a tree, and its scientific name is Acacia senegal. We find it along the Sahelian zone, located between the Atlantic Ocean and the Red Sea. Arabic gum can also be found in the Middle East, in Asia, in India, in Pakistan, etc. The tree likes sandy soils. It's a shrub with a height between 2 and 6 meters. Its shape is similar to that of a crown. It's very characteristic, and it has many branches. The flowers are naturally white and smell good. Fruits are composed of pods between 7 to 10 centimeters long and 2.5 centimeters wide. So when the plant is still young, it develops a pivot, allowing to drain a lot of water over an area reaching 500 square meters. So this tree is very drought resistant.
When you harvest, you wake up early and leave your tent with water provisions and instruments like this hooked pick, the Malgata. You must carry a can of water or camel milk and your tea equipment for the 2 p.m. break under the tree. By 6 p.m., before the sun sets, you must head back home. Harvesting gum is not easy, working hard under the sun, with thorns stinging you and small leaves falling into your eyes. Actually, acacia is a thorny tree practicing a violent self-defense. Indeed, it can tear clothes and hurt the skin. Some days we harvest 5 to 7 kilograms, but some other days we only bag 2 or 3 kilograms. A few weeks later, we bring the harvest to the market to sell it. We use this instrument, hilwakhta, to harvest the gum. Look, some of it is left here. Nowadays, thank God things are far better than during the drought, when we waited so long without seeing a drop of rain. That was during the early 1970s and the early 1980s. Back then, the kilogram was worth nothing. I can only talk of the times when it was worth 200 ogias. At the end of the 1990s, in 1998, it reached 1,000 ogias. Today, the kilogram is worth 300 or 350 ogias on the market. It's a job you do from December to April, a seasonal activity. It's a halal venture, which prevents us from doing illicit things. Baraka always rewards honest work and keeps bad behavior away. This work improves daily life, but it's not enough to feed a family. We use gum as a medicine, as an ingredient for confectionery, for starching clothes, for making sugar. What diseases are cured with it? We use it as a natural medicine for several kinds of ailments with it. Sunstroke, stomach aches, and many other diseases such as jaundice, ulcer, jaundice, and other liver diseases.
From the 16th to the 20th century, acacia was a commodity which generated a major trade. In 1715, the selling price of the gum in Paris and London was 30 times higher than the purchase price at Trarza. This very lucrative.
My father and my grandfather were traders. We have always done this business, and that's the only one we know. We started selling Arabic gum a long time ago. The harvest starts 1 month after the rainy season and ends in April. After the drought of the 1970s, the production sank drastically. However, in the last 10 years, trees have started growing better and producing more, thank God. There are trees in places where nothing used to grow. The thing is, we are rain dependent. Good rains mean abundant harvests. Over the past 4 to 5 years, we have had good harvest.
Published in 1747 in the Netherlands, with the title Arabs and Moors on their camels, their horses and their oxen to bring gums to Senegal. Gum is a very important commodity in global trade, and it has been so during
Gum is a very important commodity in global trade, and it has been so during 2 centuries. In the 18th and 19th centuries, it became essential in the textile printing industry, but gum is also very important to the history of international trade. From the 18th century on, gum producers moved toward the coast in the bays of Argen and Portendick to sell to Dutch and English merchants. The Trarza businessmen could almost always get the price they wanted. The demand was huge, sometimes massive, and when the price did not suit the buyers, the sellers threatened to return to the desert with their wares. This way, they were successful, but they had to consider their competitors. The Emirate of Brana and its people lived closer to the Senegal River and preferred dealing with the French businessmen who had settled on the island of Saint-Louis and had opened trading posts, comptoirs, along the river. In order to step ahead of the competition, the emirs of Trarza tried to forge business deals with Dutch and English companies. In 1721, the emir invited a Dutch company to build a fort, thinking that offering a 3-year-long monopoly on gum exports would wipe out any French competition. However, his letter reached Amsterdam 3 years later, and the addressees were unable to act or react.
The Sahel drought of the 1970s is a turning point, a mutation accelerator. For some scholarly tribes, gone were the days of short-distance nomadism, when camps alternated between wells of the same region. A full-fledged every man for himself led to the disappearance of many wells. Small market towns grew, and major rural exodus started. Bortures is one of these little towns where some descendants of Muhammad Old Ahmed Duro settled. As per its title, the Book of Well-Informed Scholars of the History of Wales refers to the past, but it also collects important elements for the present and the future. One could think that it almost forgets an important aspect of the region's economy, pastoralism. This sector went through significant changes since the 17th century.
Livestock farming and gum production are not contradictory activities. Animals graze leaves and pods. The animals who graze these pods are digested in the process. Pods can germinate easily. As a consequence, ruminants like camels or goats contribute to spreading acacia trees. In rural areas, pastoral systems provide more than 80% of the incomes. Milk and meat consumed in towns are also sourced there. All in all, there are 20 million pastoralists raising camels, cattle, small ruminants, sheep, and goats in 6 Sahelian countries: Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, Senegal. It's a real treasure. Approximately 60 million head of cattle, up to 160 million heads of small ruminants. Pastoralism contributes to 50% of meat production and 70% of milk output. It represents 25% of the GDP. As a consequence, pastoralism is both a social and an economic solution. This state of play was acknowledged in 2 declarations, one signed in N'Djamena in May 2013, and the other one in Nouakchott in October 2018.
At that time, farmers and pastoralists' competition was increased by a serious ecological crisis. Legal rulings keep records of their respective interests.
In West Africa and in the Sahel, from one year to the next, the rain never falls in the same place. Therefore, the grazing land is an amazing resource, but a mobile one. When governments think that pastoralism is outdated and archaic, they are wrong. They should look at this mobility with a business mindset and adapt it to the 21st century. We need to find ways to update and modernize the industry. Milk is precious, but it has no added value. It is valuable in itself, from the cow to the milk churn. It's a lucrative and impactful venture. Breeders, sorters, carriers, fodder producers, sellers, all of them earn money and create shared prosperity in their region. A small dairy company's impact is far bigger than one could imagine. The most important thing is sourcing milk at the pasture and producing goods sold in supermarkets. Half of the people live in cities. Bringing milk to consumers means packaging it, which requires pasteurizing it, right? First of all, you need to buy a medium-sized factory, a modern one, I mean. There are machines on the market, smaller than those used in larger factories, that can produce from 1,000 to 2,000 liters a day. To keep the milk for a week, you need quality packaging in cardboard, plastic, or small bags, whatever. In terms of marketing, locating your customers helps targeting and reaching them. Well-off city dwellers who can afford your goods are used to international quality standards. You must invest in quality. Since Tvisky operated in the Sahel, we have created collection centers very far in the bush because the density of milk per square kilometer is low, especially in the desert. If you want to invest in a modern factory, you need several €100,000. This is a must because your SME will compete with big industries. That's why your milk has to be so delicious that people will prefer it. That's my piece of advice. In the Sahel, unlocking the opportunities requires solving some low-intensity conflicts, which implies bringing in some perspective. Back in the 17th century, a serious ecological crisis prompted increased competition between farmers and breeders. Legal records attest to this. They also offer a vantage point into space management. This sector went through significant changes since the 17th century. At that time, farmers' and pastoralists' competition was increased by a serious ecological crisis. Legal rulings kept records of their respective interests. A fatwa written by Atfaga Minana, died 1738, offers an interesting insight.
A fatwa written by Atfaga Minahna offers an interesting insight.
The Agriculture, Forestry and Livestock Producers Organization, GNAP, states that transhumance offers 3 benefits to the pastoralists. First of all, thanks to mobility, which is also a sustainable use of natural resources, pastors can benefit from rich pastures. Secondly, pastoralists can destock, and when Côte d'Ivoire, Benin or Togo offer better prices for their cattle, they purchase crops, wood, or drinks produced with their fruits and import these into our market. Thirdly, they make profits by matching southern supply with Sahelian demand. Wells are critical to develop pastoralism, especially cattle and sheep. Cows must drink. The best strategy to ensure that cows drink well is to secure their owner's presence, and this is mandatory for their health. For camels, good shepherds must be in attendance. That's what we say. Delete. For camels and for goats, sheep are similar to cattle. In the past, well digging was expensive. Rigorous needs assessments were made before recruiting engineers. But since governments and politicians are in charge, confusion prevails.
Access to water is a challenge in Mauritania and the Sahel. Human beings, livestock, fauna and flora are concerned. Life is at stake in an austere and sometimes hostile environment. Still, the Sahel is richer than one would think. Water resources abound. Sound extraction and management are in order. Solar resources exist aplenty. This deposit can help meet important energy needs.
Solar energy can offer several solutions to improve access to water. It can change the way we live and approach access to drinking water in rural areas. Water pumping is simpler thanks to technologies offering sustainable, solid, and easy solutions. This major step forward can increase access to water for human consumption and business ventures. There are so many opportunities. Wells, boreholes, stretches of water, like rivers, can produce drinking water. Solar energy can fuel an installation from the water intake to the water supply through the compact water treatment plant. This first advantage is self-explanatory. Access to drinking water is key. In the Sahel, mobile pastoralism and seasonal variations matter, especially during the lean season. We can equip water points even in very distant locations on transhumance routes. That's the second selling point. Access to water can also be a benefit to farmers and marketing gardeners. That's my third point. In a nutshell, water and sun have the extraordinary potential to change the lives of many people while having an important economic impact.
If on a winter's night, a poet Muhammad Old Ahmad Yuro were to visit a camp illuminated by a solar well, what verses would he write? How would our Sahel look like if we spread that solution?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأنزلنا من السماء ماء بقدر فأسكناه في الأرض وإنا على ذهاب به